Do just great.
Good morning. It is still morning. I am Leah and I'm helping out Ricardo today in the vendor hall sessions. I'm here with Joe McCarville. He's the owner of 911 Gold Line Training. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you're going to talk today about the derecho that went through Iowa. That was a huge weather event, had a huge impact, and then how your DISC style and finding out what that was, how that helped you personality-wise going through these events.
Yep, and then I'll also be launching the program 911 Leadership Gold at the end as well.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself and you can take it from here.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, everybody, thanks for joining the session with 911 Gold Line Training, and thanks to Within the Trenches Media for having this virtual conference. Talk about an awesome experience for 911 dispatchers across the nation to be able to attend something like this for free. For those of you that have never heard of 911 Gold Line Training, I started the company in 2017 and started teaching in my home state of Iowa. In Iowa, I taught one day on October 23rd, 2017, and ended up filling my calendar for 2018. And then had the fortunate experience to travel overseas as well and speak to Ireland 999 emergency dispatchers, and recently filmed a success-inspired podcast with 000 emergency dispatchers. But my topic today is going to talk about a weather event, and what I want to talk to you about are a few things here. My slide's not advancing, so maybe Leah is still listening. For whatever reason, my slide's not advancing here. Leah, it was during training or testing, but my slide's not moving to the next one.
And you're sharing it there?
Yeah.
You hit there you go.
Yep. Okay. So maybe I don't know what was going on there. We'll see if we have any issues the remaining of the presentation.
I'm keeping an eye out.
Yep. So the rest of the day, thanks, Leah, for jumping back on. The rest of the presentation, we're going to talk about the derecho, a massive storm that hit the state of Iowa on August 10th in 2020. And I'm going to talk about the timing of that storm because on July 17th, 2020, I had actually taken an assessment called the DISC assessment and found out a lot about my behavior style and communication style and leadership style and how that has helped me change during the crisis and moving forward as well. It's been something I've been working on to bring all of the people in the 911 profession. And then at the end of this presentation, I'm also going to be launching the program 911 Leadership Gold that is for everybody. It's for dispatchers, supervisors, lead dispatchers, CTOs, managers, directors, and everything else, and has very limited seats, and the dates and everything else will be launched at the end of this presentation. So let me talk to you a little bit about what a derecho is. And there's a lot of words on the screen because I actually took that from weather.gov, I believe. And if you've never heard of derecho, you're in the same situation that I am. I was working on August 10th, 2020. And actually on the way home that night, I had called my mom, and my mom says to me, you went through a derecho. And I thought she just made up a word, to be honest. I had never heard of it. And it is a true, fairly rare weather phenomenon. And I never thought I would experience going through a hurricane in the state of Iowa, but they do describe derechos as an inland hurricane. So a lot of times when you think of a tornado, if you're from the Midwest, and a tornado may hit a certain part of town, or if you are in hurricane area, you can relate to exactly what I'm going to say. This storm ended up being 700 miles long. It went across our whole state and also into other states, and it was 50 miles wide. And I'm going to get into some of the challenges that caused for our backup 911 centers. But one of the things I want to do, if it works, is share a quick video with you guys. There's not much audio to it, so you probably won't be able to hear any audio. But this is about 7 or 8 minutes into the derecho that hit our agency. And it's about a 3-minute video of a cop driving down the road. And this is truly before the severe weather really took place, because in our city we had speeds of wind reach up to 140 miles an hour.
Holy shit, that could have been so much worse. I had to call my sister back. I was just on the phone with her.
So that was just one video that took place from one of our officers that got sent to the scene of a call of a lady that was trapped in her vehicle and was able to get her to safety. But one of the things I want to do is kind of set the backgrounds for people that are listening that maybe aren't from Iowa. It was really a normal Monday for our agency at first. The weather was mostly sunny, typical call volume. It was around 12:25, maybe a little earlier. I don't know the exact time frame where the tornadoes started to sound. And I was sitting in my office and I was a little confused. I knew it wasn't the first Wednesday of the month or whatever. And it was kind of an odd time, a little bit past 12 o'clock. And so I knew that the tornado sirens were probably for something legitimate. I had turned on the news on the TV in my office as well as the radio in my office, and you could hear from the weather experts' voices just how serious they were taking this storm. And it had moved so quickly from the west to the east. Maybe I should have known in advance, but unfortunately I was working and I was not paying enough attention to the weather like I probably should have been. So that's definitely a takeaway for me, to pay attention even on the sunny days to the weather, because it can have such a drastic impact. And I went out to the dispatch floor and I started setting out. We take notes and do lists for trees down that aren't on houses, whether it's a partial blockage or a full blockage of a road. And then we put them on these lists, and then we just send them in to the forestry division all at the same time to prevent extra phone calls, because we're inundated with incoming phone calls. And we also do that for stoplights that are down, as well, and places that may have flooding where barricades are needed. But the interesting thing about this storm was at 12:25-ish, from my memory at least, that's when the tornado sirens, I remember hearing them. And at 12:34, just 9 minutes later, our building started getting inundated with that wind. And what you saw in that video was about 7-8 minutes after 12:34. So I decided the time that it started hitting the building was 12:34, because I remember being in my office and looking at the clock at that time. One of the things that was very interesting was we were having some problems at this time with our generator. So it was not starting automatically. And I knew this. And so when I got that weather notice around 12:25, I immediately called building maintenance and said, try to get to the police department safely as quickly as possible in case our generator does not start. And he, like me, wasn't paying much attention to the weather. And he says, what are you talking about? And I said, we have a massive storm that's about to hit our city. And if we lose power, we're going to have to get that generator started. And so I made that phone call with him. He goes, are you serious? I said, yes, if you can, leave now. He works in a different building that wasn't very far from the police department. And fortunately, he got there just as some of that wind started. The interesting thing was, as I said, we were having problems with our generator. And after we lost power, which was about 10-15 minutes into the storm ended up lasting with the high power winds for over 45 to 55 minutes, reaching speeds up to 140 miles an hour. And the interesting thing was the building maintenance person came up while the winds were going on, and he says to me that we cannot get the generator started. I knew at that point we had a problem. Our UPS system was rated to last for 2 hours to power our whole 911 center. At that time, we had minimum staffing on the dispatch floor. So we're an 8-seat PSAP. And I immediately powered down the seats that weren't being used to conserve power. And we did everything that we possibly could to conserve that energy. And I asked him, are we going to be able to get it started? And the look on his face was he wasn't sure. And so I knew during the increased call volume, the phone 911 calls not ringing and everything else, my number one priority at this point is employee safety. In our building, we work on the 3rd floor, and we have a great view of the police department because we're surrounded by windows. During a derecho or a tornado, it gets a little intense, as you can imagine. And a few of our dispatchers were extremely stressed, nervous. And I knew that as the leader of the organization that was on site, my number one priority was their safety. So we're a long and narrow type PSAP, and I had to get as many dispatchers down onto the first 4 consoles as I possibly could, because that is as far away from the windows and as close to the emergency exit that we can get to get into safety. We were told that if we did not feel safe at any point, we could fully evacuate. I am proud of the courage and also proud that our building held up and that we provided services for our citizens of our city the whole time, and we continued to answer those phone calls. So that's a little bit about the background, and I want to talk a little bit about the end of the day. So a standard day for us in the summer, not too busy. Pretty standard day is 200 plus 911 calls in a day and 500 plus non-emergency. We have a city of 130,000 people. And so those are our standard numbers. On a busy day, we may reach 225, 250 911 calls and maybe around 550 to 600 phone calls. Our numbers for that day were 2,200 plus non-emergency calls and 1,900 plus 911 calls. Now, granted, a lot of those were abandoned just because we did not have enough staff to handle those calls. But the way the rerouting of 911 calls works in the state of Iowa is you determine which agencies back you up. And so once you hit your max on your trunk lines, it automatically rings to another 911 center. And we determined to use our county, because we're not a consolidated county, because they're on our same CAD system. And they can with us, they're on our same radio system for fires, for maintenance upgrades, for even possible tornadoes, for carbon monoxide leaks in our building, whatever it might be. This plan works extremely well. But we don't just reroute to them. They're a little smaller PSAP than we are. We also then, if they fill, reroute to the county to our south that's about the same size as us. And they were also being impacted by this storm. So the interesting thing is we had a backup plan in place for close proximity for those things that are only impacting our building. And we also had a backup plan in place for further away, about 20 to 25 miles away from where our 911 center is, for those tornado type days or floods where only we are flooding and maybe we can get to their agency. And the interesting thing about this derecho is, as I said, it was 700 miles long, almost, I said 200 miles wide. I think it was 50 miles wide. So anywhere between 50 and 200 miles wide. I have to re-look at that number. But it was impacting all of our backup 911 centers as well. So one of the most interesting things were, we not only filled our 911 cell phone trunk lines, we filled the counties, we filled the county to our south, and then it starts ringing to our state patrol. We filled all of theirs as well. The county to our south got on the phone with the state. They opened up more trunk lines and redirected to 2 other large 911 centers. The interesting thing is, other 911 centers were unable to reach us. Our phones did not stop ringing for an extended period of time, almost the likes of about 36 hours before we seen a drop in that phone call volume. During the first about 8 hours of the storm, we ended up receiving, I haven't counted individually, I still have to do that, approximately 200 calls for service through the NCIC administrative messaging system because people were unable to call us. On top of that, I am the former Iowa APCO president. I've been to several agencies in Iowa teaching for 911 Gold Line training, and several 911 dispatchers and managers across the state have my personal cell phone. I have no problems with that whatsoever. I like to stay in touch, and I thank all dispatchers for doing what they do. The interesting thing was, since they could not get a hold of our agency, I started receiving text messages from managers of other centers that were taking calls to my cell phone saying, "We got this call, we can't get a hold of you, will you enter it?" I'll bet you I took another somewhere between 70 and 100 between my own department that was texting me, helping out with non-emergency calls, and other agencies texting me from around the state as well. And I was trying to get a hold of them. Our radio system encompasses several counties throughout the state of Iowa. And there's also a second radio system in the state of Iowa that most agencies in the state have access to as well. We relied on both systems that day. I am proud to say that our radio system stayed up the whole time. Seeing some of the pictures of our tower sites after, with the bent cords and everything else and the twisted cords, it's amazing that we never did lose radio communication. Our 911 calls stayed up the whole time. And on top of that, our non-emergency calls for the city stayed up the whole time. Back to the generator story. I said we were rated for 2 hours. At 1 hour and 55 minutes, 1 hour and 55 minutes, the building maintenance person came up to me and said, "Joe, we have it started." I took a deep breath and said, "We can get through this now. Our generator is running. We're good to go." I'm unsure exactly how much longer we had on the UPS batteries, even though they are only rated for 2 hours, since we had powered down equipment and everything else for a short period of time. You're going to find out why for a short period of time. I think they would have been extended and we would have lasted longer. But getting that generator going was one of the best things that I had heard that whole time. I couldn't have asked for a better commitment from the police department that was checking on us, with the administrative captain, my staff, and everything else, which I got a big shout out to the staff. For any 911 center that's listening during a crisis, and during this year as well, your staff is the most important thing that you have, not only during a crisis, but on a day-to-day basis. Take care of your staff. Check on them. Tell them repeatedly how important they are. Because during the storm, it's going to matter. For evacuation purposes, we did have one dispatcher that took a family member call. We have several people that were trying to get information about how their family's doing that was at home, kids at home, everything else. School had not started yet, and our dispatchers were working, doing the best that they could. We did have one dispatcher step out for a little while to go to safety because it was extremely intense working up and hearing those windows make noises I've never heard them make. But we had a strong commitment. During the afterwards, our staff started showing up without being called because a lot of times I was trying to call them from my cell phone, unable to get through. We lost a lot of cell phone communication throughout the whole community, but for whatever reason, everybody could still call 911, but the trying to call from one person to the next was extremely challenging and tough. We did eventually get a hold of some people, but I had one staff member that showed up by her bike. I had other staff members that their tree had fell on their garage and also damaged their car, and somehow they were finding ways to show up. The staff members that were working, that were supposed to be off at 3 p.m., didn't even have to ask. They knew how busy we were. They knew we weren't fully staffed and they weren't able to go home. They just stayed. Why? Because 911 dispatchers are truly heroes. And they will do that for your agency if you treat them the way you should as a leader on a day-to-day basis. So it's every day that you need to make sure you know your staff is the most important thing you got, because during a crisis, that's what you have to rely on. The gas leak phone calls. Our whole city was erupting with gas leaks all over. We were struggling to get the gas turned off because nobody could get anywhere due to the storm. That was one of the more interesting things, that it wasn't just one area, it was all over the city. The trees down, lights down, everybody's used to that during a storm, and gas leaks as well, but this was all over the whole community. And then about 6 hours after the event, it was the welfare check calls that started to pour in. There were the calls from people hearing about this from all over the nation, whether it be via social media. We did not get a ton of national news. If you lived in this area, you would see all the comments of why are we not getting a little more national attention. So maybe you never did hear about it. Maybe you did. We got some national attention. So whatever that balance is, right or wrong, we got some and we didn't get some. And from a 911 perspective, it was good to get the message out there so that people knew what was going on. But we also seen an increase in the welfare check calls where daughters, sons were trying to call their parents that maybe lived in this area, or vice versa, parents trying to call their daughters and sons and unable to reach them. And so the welfare check calls definitely went up. The interesting thing is we have a lot of dispatchers that live in the community or within the county or within a 2-county radius if people live to the south. And so this really did impact everybody. And everybody in the 911 center had their story to tell, because we had dispatchers with house damage. We had dispatchers that had acres or a couple acres of lot that lost all of their trees and everything else and wanted to work on their homes. It was extremely stressful. We had dispatchers with trees through their houses. We still to this day have dispatchers with holes in their roofs, getting new roofs replaced. We still have a dispatcher that lost a vehicle during the storm and everything else. So the staff has been extremely stressed. So you put this on top of the pandemic and COVID and all the precautions. You put it on top of the just the nation in general and the stress of everything going on with the protests and everything else. And then you add to it this storm. And on top of that, we were in the middle of the hiring process to hire dispatchers as well. So you couldn't ask for the perfect storm. And I could not be more proud of my staff. And I started looking at myself and saying, I have to be the absolute best leader that I can be. And I've got several years of leadership experience in 911. I teach and everything else. And I had to learn more about myself, which is coming up here shortly. But I also want to touch base on the city because I'm proud of the city. The majority were without power, some for a short time and some for several days. I believe my mom lost power for over 2 weeks. And I came home from leaving work. By the time I got to leave, it was 7 p.m. And I just got to come home briefly to check to see if my house had any damage. I do live to the county to the south. I don't have a ton of trees, so I was very fortunate. But part of my neighbor's roof had blown off, and their shingles and everything else were laying on my roof and on my deck. And like I said, I was very fortunate. I had some minor stuff to take care of, stuff I don't even really like talking about because some people lost their whole business, their whole house, everything else. So I knew at that point I had nothing personally to deal with. I had already done about 9.5, 10 hours at work. I went right back to work, and I stayed until our midnight dispatchers came in. I wanted to be the one to personally greet them, tell them what was going on, telling them where we are at as well. And one of the things that I did is I did like a newsletter every day. There were so many emails flying around that I did not expect the dispatchers for that first week to find a number from an email to call for this situation or that situation. So I would take all of the emails as the week progressed and put them into one PDF like newsletter that said, hey, these are the things you need to be aware of. This is where the food's being served. This is where the shelter things are taking place. This is where the phone numbers that we need to call to get a hold of somebody. And they had a quick access point. I only had to do it for about a week, and then the information slowed down enough to where we could manage it. The picture you see on your screen is of Willie Ray's Q Shack. It's literally a shack. It's on one of our streets up in the northern part of our city. And this guy was incredible. He had a ton of food. He cooks barbecue food and everything else. And I'm a huge barbecue fan myself. And I believe he had lost power and was unable to serve food out of his agency. So he took his truck and his grill and went down to some of the most impacted areas in our city and community and served the food for free. And people donated to him, and he was able to feed, unite the community, and take care of everybody for an extended period of time. I believe even once a week, he may still be serving free food to this day. So our community really did rally together. That was really nice to see. It's unfortunate it came from such a powerful storm, but that was interesting to see. It didn't take necessarily very long to cause some arguments, because when it first went out and we lost power, all of the gas stations that were in our community had lost power, so nobody could get any gas. Everybody needed gas for chainsaws, for generators, for vehicles, and nobody could get any gas for about 24 to 48 hours, if I remember correct. And when the gas finally did turn back on for people to get it for their generators and everything, the traffic jams were extreme. Sometimes tensions ran short of people cutting people off or traffic accidents. We had some medical calls that started coming into our center because of people using equipment and lifting heavy things that maybe they weren't accustomed to. We had some severe hemorrhage type calls that came into us. And so the stress of the storm was there, but then it was the stress of the aftermath. And that went on for several days. It's still going on. As a leader of our agency, I still walk around and check in on the dispatchers that had damage to their house or their residence or their trees are down. And I believe the number that they've been saying around the city is roughly between 50 and 60% of all of the trees in our whole city of 130,000 people were either leveled or destroyed. It's now October 7th, so it's a couple days away from a couple months later, and we still have trees all over that are waiting to be picked up. We do have power back to I believe almost everybody that can get power back. And we also have gas running, and there's been several trees that have been cleaned up and everything else. But overall, the community did come together to help each other. And that was something that was extremely nice to see. So one of the things I said is I wanted to talk about DISC, and this is where I'm going to move on from the storm. I could go on for all day long about that storm because it was so impactful. The one takeaway that I'm going to say to everybody that's listening is if you have backup 911 centers that back you up, or if you have a secondary location, really think about how close that is to you, and is it too close, and does it need to be further away? I know this is a completely rare weather phenomenon and everything else, but we believe we're still set up for success because we are 25 miles away, but we may choose a third alternate PSAP as well to reroute some of our calls if we fill them up moving forward. in the future. So really think about how far your backup 911 center is, and is that the best? Because this thing was definitely a fierce storm that challenged us in ways we've never been challenged before. So I want to talk a little bit about myself so I can make this DISC thing and 911 leadership gold make sense. One of the things on July 17th, and I'll get to that slide in just a second, that I took was a DISC assessment on myself. But I want to explain where I was during the storm. I was at work when it hit. I already told you that I left, went home, very minor damage, went right back to work and everything else. But the best benefit for me for that storm to be the best leader, coworker, 911 dispatcher, and everything else, because I did don the headset and started taking a few calls for a brief moment of time as well, was that I understood how I react normally with other people in the work environment and under stress. This assessment is short and brief to take. It's affordable. And I am going to push that every 911 dispatcher across the nation takes this in training academies coming up. I encourage all CTOs to take it, and you're going to find out more information about it here in the next 20-25 minutes. It truly helped me and continues to help me every single day since I've taken this test or assessment. It's not a test. The assessment comes and it's a link you just click on, you type in your email, and you get a 30-page report. 30 pages of information from me. I can send you the email to do it. I'll tell you about cost and everything else because it does cost me to send these licenses to everybody else. And it gives you information about your normal behavior, communication strengths in your behavior, things you should be aware of about your work style, and it's all about you. So the interesting thing is you can sit there and attend customer service class after customer service class, and we need to continue to do that. But until we know how we react normally, what our communication style is, how we respond to stress, and does our communication style change, that is worth its weight in gold. It's one of the best graphs you're going to get on this report is what you do during stress. And I can tell you personally that my style changes, and I'm going to relate this to a story real quick. When I took the assessment, I found out I was a high I style. So I'm up there, I'm people oriented, and I'm influencing, I guess. And so that probably explains why I like to go around the nation and teach and why I'm on this screen doing this presentation right now. But I also found out that in everyday life, my C style, which is a little more reserve and task oriented, is a little bit lower. It's A to B to C to D, and those people are great. As everybody's great. There's strengths and weaknesses in every style, including my own, and I'll go over a few of those about myself as well. So the interesting thing is we do 360-degree employee surveys about every 3 years, 2-3 years, and two of the questions that are on there are the rules in this department fair? And we score very, very high on are the rules fair? And then the second question is, are the rules consistent? And we consistently take a dip, enforce consistently. We consistently take a dip on that question. And it has always challenged me, bothered me a little bit. I found myself to be extremely consistent. But the interesting thing when I got my DISC results back were looking at my chart at times of stress. So normally every day I go into work, I'm pretty influencing, I'm motivating them, I'm encouraging them, I'm people oriented and outgoing. And then when it came to possibly having to deal with a write-up of an employee or implementing a program and sending out instructions to the employee, my C style of wanting to do it A, B, C, being very reserved and all of a sudden not talking as much to them when I'm talking to them about what happened, because I'm under stress, my style changed. And that's the reason I get scored low for are the rules consistent. So I've started reading what I should be aware of in my report before I go to work and everything else. And I'm going to show you the thing, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I want to relate this to why I think every 911 dispatcher needs to take the assessment, because you're going to find out how you normally are and how you are under stress. Do you have a shift that maybe struggles to communicate once in a while? Or maybe you have low morale in your department. And then you wonder what is going on. Or maybe there's shift blaming. It's not our fault, it's the day shift's fault. It's not our fault, it's the other shift's fault, or whatever it might be. A lot of this relates to the fact that we work in a stressful environment. And if we do not understand our own communication style and how we communicate under stress, we may be placing blame somewhere else instead of looking at ourselves and making true difference. And we can make a big change in 911. I'm going to start teaching DISC all over the nation. I'm a certified trainer and a certified consultant in DISC. And I want to bring this presentation to agencies. I want to bring it to agencies for CTOs, for leaders and managers. I want to bring it to agencies for whole departments. I want to bring it to state training academies. I think every 911 state training academy should make this part of their mandatory training so that they know how they operate under stress, to make them aware of that they may snap, or they may say this, or maybe they're doing things differently, and ways that they can improve. The 30 pages includes information on how you communicate, ways you can communicate better, things you need to be aware of, things you do in the workplace, how you communicate under stress. It gives you a game plan for moving forward for personal growth, and also includes an action plan. This is the best thing I've ever done in my professional career, and I wish I would have had it several years ago, because it's going to make me an extremely better leader. So here's some statistics and facts comparing it to the derecho. Ironically, on July 17th, 2020, there's the cover page of my personality indicator report. I had taken the DISC license. It was part of me studying and getting certified for being the DISC certified trainer and DISC certified consultant that I am. So it was just about 3 weeks before the derecho hit. And the last week in July, I went on vacation. So I'm not going to sit here and say I read it during the last week in July, because I was actually enjoying myself at a lake and pontooning and everything else. So anyhow, the 30-page report I read, and I said, this stuff is extremely interesting and extremely powerful. And then as I became certified to teach it and understood it even more, it's even that much better. And I cannot stress that I started reading it before I went to work, before I went on vacation. I came back from vacation. I said, okay, it's going to be a stressful time. I'm coming back from vacation. I'm behind on my work. I have a ton to do. What is it that I need to be aware of so I don't stress out my staff, because I shouldn't do that just coming back from vacation. So there's the be aware of these things under stress and everything else. And I read those every day, because those other styles, because my I and my S are so high that the C and the D are a little bit lower normally, but during times of stress, they come up, and that's why I'm being scored inconsistently. So I read this to remind myself, be aware of these things. And I can tell you that since the derecho, the staff has really been open and honest in all communication with me. They always were, but sometimes during high times of stress, we all come together, and then it kind of fizzles away, or we're not being checked on enough, or there's critical incident debriefings that need to take place. And understanding your role and what you can do to get your department together after one of those is extremely impactful. And as a leader, if you know that information about your employees, and you need somebody to influence the department, or maybe somebody that's encouraging, you can start strategically asking people to do certain things and give them personal growth. And the report comes from their assessment, not your personal opinion. So I can't stress that I just wish every 911 dispatcher across the nation would take it, because I think we can truly make a huge difference in 911 all over the world as well. My DISC assessment brought me information on the value I bring to the group, personal growth areas, communication tips for relating to others, strengths about my style, and everything else. And I briefly touched on this, that I've read this report several times to remind me about those things. Here's a few examples from my report. It also comes with Power DISC and lists a bunch of things that you do at work. One of the categories is detailing, doing something that's extremely detailed, maybe entering a warrant or doing a validation or whatever it might be that you do, entering information into your CAD. And it tells me right there at detailing, hey, be aware, Joe, you might have to slow down and think about what you're doing. Proceed with caution to make sure you get it right. My high I style is not necessarily focused on the details. It's focused on enthusiasm, outgoing, everything else. So the interesting thing about enthusiasm is doing a validation. I still haven't met a ton of people that are really excited about entering stuff into the NCIC system. So maybe you are out there. Go ahead and comment if that's one of your favorite things to do, because I'll know watching the comments what personality style you have. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not mine. So the other thing is persisting. Others like working together because typically I do more than my share of the work. I'm a persistent person. You'll maintain a hands-on approach and let others visibly see that I'm a team player. Sometimes dispatchers, though, don't always like that hands-on approach. So I have to be aware of that. And in that same thing, in the last one, the last sentence with communicating with others, talk less, listen more. I have shared very little information about my agency of what I have went through since the storm because of this. And I think that's why I'm rallying the troops, is because I'm asking them questions and asking them to tell me how they're doing. And I'm listening to them more solely from my DISC report because I knew it was a weakness of mine to begin with, and this reinforced it. The other thing that my report told me is that my style tends to have a hard time saying no. I love to say yes to everybody. Joe, you want to go golf and have fun this weekend? Yes. Joe, you want to go do this? You want to go do that? Yes, 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 yes. And then I sit there and say I'm too busy, or I'm hectic, or I'm burned out, or I'm stressed out. Our agency was going through a tumultuous time in 2020. I knew I had to start saying no to some things and reminding my staff that they absolutely have to come first. They're the most important thing. I've said it numerous times during the presentation. So here we go. Here is your chance to get your DISC assessment. And yes, there's a little bit of a cost because, like I said, it costs me. And I'm also launching the program 911 Leadership Gold during this session. If you're on it, stay tuned for the dates. Everything's coming in the next few slides. 2020 has been a challenging year. I think about all of you dispatchers all over the nation, as well as in other countries and everything else. It's my goal to make a difference worldwide for 911 dispatchers, and this is how we do it. I'm starting with this presentation, and it's already announced on one of the podcasts as well that I filmed, and I'm going to keep pushing this message because I want everybody to take this. So welcome, Leadership Gold, available for all 911 dispatchers. Here's the first package. It's the bronze package. It's the least amount of cost, and you get the full DISC assessment still. You get it. You receive a license to complete your DISC assessment and start improving your communication in the workplace. I'm offering this all year long. All you have to do is send me an email, joe@911goldlinetraining.com. And within the next 7 to 10 days, depending on how many emails I receive, I will be sending out those licenses to you to take your DISC assessment to get your 30-page report of what your style is, how you communicate under stress, and what you can do in the workplace to make your workplace better. That's the bronze package. The silver package. You receive the license to complete your DISC assessment to start improving your communication. And you also receive up to a 60-minute one-on-one conversation with me. I'm a certified John Maxwell team DISC trainer and consultant to go over your DISC results, explain the graphs to you in detail, create an action plan for you so that it makes sense. And you have to email me for this, joe@911goldlinetraining.com, and we can set up that appointment as well. For agencies that are listening to this, if you want to bring this to your whole agency, maybe you have 20 people or more, let me know. It'll be a discounted price. And there's also a presentation where I can come to your agency as well, and where everybody does it. And then I explain DISC to everybody and talk about coworkers, and they would get when communicating with Joe, do this, don't do this. And they'll have name tags in front of them, a way to rally your CTOs to make sure that you're getting the most out of your training. So the Leadership Silver package, you get the DISC assessment one-on-one. Just know that bringing my training to your agency virtually or in person is also available. And here it is, the thing we've all been waiting for. What is the gold package of Leadership Gold? It is the full presentation of everything. You get the bronze package with it. You'll take the DISC assessment. You'll do the silver package. You'll get a one-on-one up to a 60-minute conversation with me to understand it. And then October 27th through the 29th, I am launching the 911 Leadership Gold virtual class. The class is up to 10 people in each class because I want everybody's voice heard. I know that doesn't sound like a lot of people, but I'm going to do each class 3 times a day. And you pick which class you want to be in. You want either pick the first class. So on October 27th, if you want to be in the first class, it starts at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. To the first 10 people that email me and say they want to be registered for the class. I'll tell you what you get in just a second. If you want to be in the second class, each day starts at $1,400. You can't switch between 1 day and 2 days unless one of the classes doesn't reach their maximum. The third class starts at 19:30 hours Central Standard Time each day. The dates of the class are October 27th through the 29th. The 27th will be 2 hours. The 28th will be 2 hours. The 29th, depending on engagement with the audience and how far we move along, will be scheduled for anywhere from 2 hours to 4 hours to make sure we get you all of the information. So what comes during the class? Here it is. You get the DISC assessment, one-on-one coaching. October 27th, you'll get to hear a 2-hour presentation with the members of the class that enroll in 911 Leadership Gold to hear what sort of information I will be talking about and bringing. If you ask me to do it for a shift of yours or an agency of yours, you get to get the most benefit out of your DISC, understanding how it relates to you, understanding how it relates to you in the workplace, and understanding what changes you can make with your team and even other people. Or if you're a private company and a vendor, if you're listening to this and you ask, should our employees in the private organization take DISC? The answer is yes. Maybe you get really close to closing the gap on a sale, and then at the last minute you have some churn or whatever it might be, and you don't always close the deal. You will get beneficial information from understanding yourself and how you can improve and make yourself a better employee regardless of your profession. But I'm gearing the whole 911 Leadership Gold mostly towards the dispatchers, but anybody can take it. October 28th, for the 2 hours on there, we will start the mastermind session. This is new. I'm unaware of anybody doing mastermind sessions. I'm bringing the John Maxwell Mastermind session for leading during a crisis, adversity to advantage to you. You won't just listen to me speak on October 28th. You will hear videos from John Maxwell. If you don't know who that is, he's viewed as one of the #1 people in the world on personal development and leadership all over the world. And his leadership teachings are something to hear. You will get the printout of the participant guide. It's several pages long to take notes on, and we will go through and we will play the video. We will discuss it. That's why the class is limited to 10 people. And we will discuss, how does this impact your 911 center? And you will get tremendous leadership insights of leading during a crisis. And if 2020 has taught us anything, it's taught us we need to be able to handle adversity and take it and move it to an advantage for our 911 center. October 29th, we will complete the leading through crisis, adversity to advantage lessons and videos from John Maxwell. You'll have points of contact for everybody else if the classes fill. I'm doing the classes if only one person registers for them because I think it's that impactful, but they're limited to 10. So make sure you send me an email. Upon completion, you will get 2 certificates, one from 911 Gold Line Training for completing the whole program, and 2, a certificate from John Maxwell saying you completed the leading through crisis, adversity to advantage. That's Leadership Gold. They just put up the link. It's on my website. You can go there. You can send me a link on, fill out the form, tell me which package you're interested in, or you can just send me an email at joe@911goldlinetraining.com. And also on the website, if you're more of a phone-driven person, we now have it linked to WhatsApp. So you can go ahead and send me a message if you want more information direct from my website to my WhatsApp, and I will respond to you just as quickly as I possibly can. So I hope that made a little bit of sense. Everybody's saying, well, what's it cost? What's the catch? Until the end of 2020, I lowered the cost as much as I possibly could because all you deserve it with budgets being tight and what we've went through. Anybody that wants to take the DISC bronze package, even if your agency won't pay for it, I tried to make it as affordable as possible. Until the end of 2020, it costs $55. If you want the silver package with the one-on-one with me, to understand your results better, I made it at $125. And the gold package, the class from October 27th through October 29th, is $199 for excellent training from John Maxwell and your DISC assessment and a one-on-one coaching with myself. I can't thank you guys enough for everything that you do. I hope you enjoyed the presentation of the Derecho and how DISC has made me a better coworker, a better person, a better leader, and also is starting to make me better under stress. It can do the same thing from you. We overcome challenges by making the challenges smaller and make ourselves bigger. It's time for all of you 911 dispatchers to start making yourself bigger and start improving your communication in the workplace so that we can increase morale, decrease retention, and provide the citizens that we serve the best level of service. Thank you to Within the Trenches Media. They make this possible for us, and Leah and Ricardo behind the scenes and everything that you have done. Thank you for making this possible. Thank you also to everyone that tuned in and listened. I hope you share this message. I hope you say that you're signing up and you're registering for it because you want to and everything else. And I hope you truly enjoy the rest of your conference. I cannot thank you enough for everything that you do. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. That was awesome. Those pictures of the Derecho were in video. That was something else. And I love how you tied in the DISC assessment with it. That was really great. We do have a question down at the bottom. I'm not sure if you already answered this one, but it says, did you guys write up some sort of after action report about what you did, what you would do differently, and what you're doing if it comes up again? It sounds like they just went through something similar with fires in the Pacific Northwest, and it affected 2 of the 3 counties that they dispatched for. So did you do an after-action review on that?
We have not done it yet. We still have dispatchers with house damage. We're still learning more from the storm. So as soon as everything is concluded and the trees are kind of gone, so we're still taking calls. We don't want to exclude anything from the after-action report. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that we include everything so we can learn from the whole program or the whole project. So I'm hoping to get the dispatchers together with the field responders and everything else and make sure that we do some learning things from it. And we need to make sure the only way we can improve is if we learn from it. So doing an after-action report isn't done as of the filming of Dare to Be Great 2. But it is something that I hope to do moving forward.
Yeah, that would be a great training piece as well. I'd like to think people would probably want to see that and how you guys handled it. And those events are prolonged, so I get the waiting on that. Well, thanks again. Thank you for being a silver sponsor of Dare to Be Great 2. Really enjoyed your session. Your contact information is in the comments, so when people watch this later, they'll be able to see it.
Yes, absolutely.
Our bronze sponsors are coming up next at 12:30. There's Curtis, the founder of Next Gen Lab, and then Olivia for yoga for first responders. So those should be interesting. And again, they'll start at 12:30. Thanks, Joe. Great to see you.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Have a great conference.